just don't know where I can go. Fun's getting low. Winter is a coming fast and colder than the last. Pity for me, cold as can be. When breezes blow with ice and snow, no wonder then I sing time and again.
This is Sparky on Ice, the coldest podcast on the internet. Today is Tuesday, November 17th, and I've been on ice for 44 days. Well, what a busy week this has been. It all started off relatively calm and depressing with news about the plane being delayed, so we would have another full week of code yellow. But on Tuesday, we had a meeting about some changes that were happening. They had managed to get us a weekend of code green. The idea was to isolate the 3 new arrivals in Hut 10 so the station wouldn't have to stay in yellow for so long. And it was quite a relief. Being in yellow for 3 weeks had already put everyone on edge. People were beginning to get tired, frustrated, and depressed, including me. So we were going green on Friday. There was this feeling of relief and excitement in the air as news spread around the station. See, the station thrives when people can get together and do things. Many of us may not like being around a lot of people, but we do enjoy being around some people. And it's a strange thing for me. Back home, I tend to avoid the gatherings and social events. But I guess since I don't have the people I love around me, I'm craving just being around people in general. And I think that is even more prevalent this year with so many things being restricted, both here and back home. Which brought up an interesting point someone made in a meeting last week. We here on the ice get a chance, however small, to be around people without masks. We get to go places and be within 6 feet of other people. Our family and friends do not get that luxury. And we need to recognize that when we complain about masks and social restrictions. So as much as we hate Code Yellow, we know that we have it immensely better than anyone back in the States or pretty much anywhere else in the world right now. Because we can, in fact, forget about COVID for a little while, even if it's for 4 days or 3 weeks or whatever. We can feel secure knowing that we probably won't have to deal with COVID for a while. But back to the green. Originally, I wanted to do karaoke on Friday night, but after discussing it, we decided the first night of green should be a night just to gather and enjoy the company of others. We decided on Sunday night instead. So I scheduled my D&D for Friday night. This was the first session running out of the abyss for the group, and it takes a ton of prep for the DM on this particular campaign. I'd been working on this for a little over a week to get ready, and I am glad I did. There is so much. There's 9 or 10 NPCs plus just in the cells, and then the myriad of other things that happened during the first session. It went well, with the players having really role play, since the first section is more about getting out of prison alive than trying to fight your way out. And I'm pretty sure everyone enjoyed this session. One person who came to observe, as she had never played before, decided to roll up a character right after the session, and she is really excited to play. But one other thing happened this weekend. I knew the annual Halloween party had been rescheduled for Saturday night since we couldn't have it during Code Yellow. It is usually a costume parade and a contest followed by a dance party. And as usual, I planned not to attend. But on Thursday, I was talking to one of the organizers and told them I was willing to help out the DJ since they hadn't used the equipment in the bar before. Well, the next morning, got an email from him asking if I would just be willing to take over the dance party. And just a little info on me, I love dance music and I love sharing my dance music. It is definitely my preferred style to listen to. So I was more than happy to share my love of dance music with. So that Friday night after D&D, I sat down and created a 20-hour set list for a 3-hour dance party. I have a mixer on my laptop, so it wasn't that big an undertaking, and I really enjoyed doing it. Saturday was pretty much a wash for most folks on station. Things got done, but not like usual. Lots of people were spending the afternoon getting ready for the Halloween party, and I was really excited to finally get a chance to be a real dance party DJ. So at 8:30, the parade started, and the judging happened. Costumes were really, really cool. There was a Luke Skywalker with an actual glowing lightsaber. Lots of animal onesies. There was a Mario. One guy dressed up as a McMurdo vending machine, and it had like Coke and cigarettes and all sorts of stuff. We don't actually have a vending machine here, so it was kind of funny. We even had a Ghostbusters trio with, I don't know which Ghostbuster it was, but they had someone else as Slimer and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. It was really funny. They won the a prize for the only group costume, because they were the only group costume. And then at 9, my turn started. I don't remember everything I played, but like any dance party, it started off kind of slow for the first couple songs. I was starting to worry that I picked bad songs, but then it started to pick up. A few more people started dancing, and then a dozen started dancing. And within 15 minutes, the floor was full of people. And it was pretty much nonstop the rest of the night. I did a couple of requests, one for some electro swing, so I played Caravan Palace's song Dramaphone, and a swing dance circle broke out. I wasn't expecting that. And as with all good things, it had to end at midnight. I had decided to end with a specific song so that it would end on a high note with a lot of fun. I chose Backstreet Boys' I Want It That Way. I figured it was well known enough to be a sing-along and let everyone cool down before shutting down the fun. And I was really amazed they didn't ask for more songs. That was probably the most fun I've had down here this season. But we have to take the good with the bad, and Sunday night was a disaster for me. As I had mentioned, we had scheduled karaoke for that night, another thing I enjoy doing. And by 7 p.m., I had a feeling that it was going to be rough. I had forgotten to get the key to the bar, so I had to get one brought to me. Then I had trouble with the lights for the stage. They had worked perfectly the night before, but now they were just strobing and out of sync. It took me 15 minutes to work that out. Finally just turned off the controller and let the sound control them. Then my main karaoke software was not putting lyrics on the second screen, and I could not figure out why. I tried everything I knew to get it working, but just could not get it. I always have a backup plan though, so I pulled out the old laptop I used last year and set it up. However, I hadn't loaded up the new songs from the hard drive to the index for the software, and this normally takes about an hour, but I had hoped it would be okay. And it was for a while, but eventually it started slowing down the system to a point where it was unusable. But we did get about 40 minutes of karaoke before it failed, so it wasn't a complete loss. People still got to hang out and talk while I tried to fix the problems. I think I fixed some of the problems now, but I will have to wait to get back in the bar later this week so I can test the video and make sure that's going to work. And I've been practicing bass more. I have learned the intros to a couple songs. I did make a video of it on my YouTube channel if you want to go check that out. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. I also went to open mic night. I needed some downtime to just sit and listen to some local musicians. I really enjoyed it. We have some really talented folks here, and maybe next year I can be good enough to play bass on stage. In other news, we should be setting up Williams Field later this week or early next week. We are about to enter what we call the air gap. This is a time of year when we don't have any C-17s or QE-C-130s landing at Phoenix. When we get temps in the teens and 20s, the runway is harder to compact and turns a bit soft. Really dangerous to land a wheeled aircraft out there. So in most summers, we have Williams Field to support the skied aircraft like the LC-130s. They can't land at Phoenix because the skis would destroy the hard-packed ice. So every year we set up the mobile skiway with its own little town and lighting corridor. Except this year's different. This year, because of COVID, the LC-130s will be staged in New Zealand and only fly for emergencies. But they still need the lights for the skiway, which my team is responsible for installing. That means a ton of planning and setup to get ready before we even head out to the ice to do the install. It also means thousands of foot of cable that needs to be pulled and set on poles. It is quite an undertaking, and it takes pretty much the whole crew a week to get it done. And I'll be going out a couple times, so I'll get some pictures while I'm out there of the work and put them either on my YouTube or maybe throw them up on Facebook or Twitter. Anyway, well, that's all the updates I have for this week. I guess we'll move on to history. This week, we take a look at part 2 of Robert Falcon Scott's second expedition to the pole. We left off, they had just chosen the party to head for the pole, so we'll go from there. Over a few days, the 3 parties set off with the intention to meet along the way. The slowest party was the motor sledges, next were the ponies, and last of all, the quickest group, the dogs, who followed later. One of the sledges soon gave out, while the other was abandoned shortly afterward. The men of that party carried on by man-hauling. On November 1st, 1911, 12 men, each with a pony and a sledge, left Cape Evans in detachments. This included the final party of 5 that would push towards the pole. The other men were not to reach the pole. Their role was supportive in helping transport supplies for the polar party and establishing depots for the polar party on the way back so they didn't have to carry so many supplies with them. They would return to the winter quarters at Hut Point. The distance from the winter quarters at Hut Point to the pole and back was 1,766 miles, every step of the way had to be marched on foot with or without skis. They traveled by night for the benefit of the ponies, as this was the austral summer, and they had 24-hour daylight. Temperatures never rose above 0 Fahrenheit. Fighting constant snowfalls, the team reached a food and supply depot called One Ton Camp they had laid the previous summer on the 15th day. There was a constant worry that the ponies would not be able to keep going, and upon reaching Camp 20 on November 24th, the first pony was killed. 4 camps later, on December 1st, the second pony was shot. Depots were made at regular intervals of roughly 70 miles, each containing food and fuel for a week for the returning parties. The weather that season was particularly bad. Extreme cold interspersed with warmer than usual blizzards that melted the snow made everything wet and traveling impossible. The ponies continued to have a difficult time of it, sinking to the level of their bellies in the soft snow and becoming totally exhausted. They were shot and left behind as depot food, leaving the remainder of the traveling as man-hauling. Each of the party then began by pulling around 200 pounds through soft snow, into which they sank nearly up to their knees. They were affected by snow blindness and sometimes stumbled in crevasses, sledges and all. On December 13th, the day before Amundsen reached the pole, the party had advanced less than 4 miles in 9 hours. On December 20th, Scott named the first returning party of 4. Scott had dreaded this moment, as all had pulled to the limit of their strength, but this 4 were now to be deprived of their reward, attainment of the South Pole. They reached home at Hut Point 35 days later, on January 26th. The remaining men made good progress, and soon the time for Scott to make his second difficult announcement that the further 3 men were to return to Hut Point, leaving the final party of 5. The 2 parties separated on January 3rd at 87 degrees 32 minutes south, at an altitude of 10,280 feet on the high polar plateau, 169 miles from the pole. Scott and the others followed Shackleton's route from 1909. On January 6th, they crossed the line of latitude where Shackleton turned back and were further south, 88 degrees 23 minutes south, than any men had been before, or so they believed. They were now 97 miles from the pole, but it took them 10 days to cover this due to weather conditions and the state of the snow and ice they were pulling the sledges across. The men were growing very tired by this point. Progress was made only 5, 6, or 7 miles a day. Each day was a hard grind, and it was taking a dreadful toll. On January 16th, they made good progress and thought they would reach the pole the following day. In the afternoon of that day, Bauer spotted something ahead which looked like a cairn. Half an hour later, they realized the black speck was a flag tied to a sledge bearer. Nearby was the remains of a camp, along with tracks made by sledges and dogs. It was not yet the pole, however. This is a quote from Scott. This told the whole story. The Norwegians had forestalled us and are first at the pole. It is a terrible disappointment, and I am very sorry for my loyal companions. Many thoughts come, and much discussion we have had. Tomorrow we must march on the pole, and then hasten home with all speed we can compass. All the daydreams must go. It will be wearisome return. On January 17th was a, quote, horrible day. The strong headwind and temperature of negative 30 degrees Celsius gave 3 of them soft frostbite. Scott's journal records, "Great God, this is an awful place and terrible enough for us to have labored to it without the reward of priority." They reached the pole on January 17, 1912, to find a small tent supported by a single bamboo flying Norwegian flag. Inside was a record of the 5 who had been the first to reach the pole, which was Roald Amundsen, Olav Alvesen, Himmler Hansen, Sverre H. Hassel, and Oscar Whistling. There was also a letter to be delivered to King Haakon of Norway. And that is going to do it for history this week. Next week, we cover the disastrous return trip for Scott. And I don't have any more questions to answer, so be sure to send me any questions you might have, either on my Facebook or my Twitter account, or you can put comments in YouTube, and I'll try to answer them as well. And I'll try to be back again next week. Until then, stay warm.